This story is titled The Necklace She Sold. When I was 9 years old, I used to think my mom was invincible. She was the kind of woman who never seemed to bend under the weight of the world, even when we both knew the world was crushing her. Her laugh filled rooms. Her hugs could heal skinned knees and broken hearts alike. She wasn't just my mom. She was my universe. That's why, years later, when I saved up every last penny from my part-time job at the diner to buy her a necklace for her birthday, I felt like I was giving her something eternal, something as solid as the love we shared. It wasn't flashy or expensive. It was a simple silver chain with a small locket shaped like a teardrop. Inside, I slipped a picture of us from when I was a little girl, perched on her lap, both of us smiling wide. It felt like a promise. No matter how chaotic life got, we'd always have each other. When she opened it, her eyes welled up, and for a moment I thought I had managed to give her back a piece of herself, something untouched by hardship. She wore it every day, or so I thought. Years passed, and life happened. I went to college, moved out of state, and found myself swept up in the current of adulthood. Phone calls turned into hurried texts. Visits became fewer and farther between. I told myself she understood, that she wanted me to live my life fully. But part of me wondered if I was leaving her behind in the process. Then came the day that shattered everything I thought I knew about my mom. I had come home for the holidays, eager to bask in the warmth of her presence. We were sipping tea at the kitchen table, the scent of cinnamon and pine filling the air, when I noticed something, or rather, the absence of something. Her necklace. The necklace I had given her. It was like a ghost, haunting the empty space where it should have been. "Mom," I said cautiously, setting my mug down, "where's your necklace? The one I gave you?" She froze for a split second, so brief I almost missed it. Then she looked at me, her face calm, but her eyes carrying a weight I couldn't yet decipher. "I sold it," she said, her voice steady, as if she were discussing the weather. I blinked, sure I had misheard. "You sold it?" She nodded, taking another sip of tea. "I needed the money more than memories." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart raced as a dozen questions and accusations swirled in my head. How could she? Didn't it mean anything to her? Didn't I mean anything to her? But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I forced a brittle smile and muttered, "Oh," before excusing myself to the bathroom. Once inside, I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection. My hands were trembling. I felt hollow, betrayed. The necklace had been more than a gift. It was a symbol of everything we'd been through together, of the bond we shared. And she had sold it. For money. I barely spoke for the rest of the visit. My mom tried to ask if I was okay, but I brushed her off, claiming I was just tired from the trip. In truth, I didn't know how to be around her anymore. The woman who had seemed invincible to me as a child now felt like a stranger. When I left, she hugged me tight, whispering, "I love you," into my hair. But the words felt empty. I drove back to my apartment in silence. Her words, "I needed the money more than memories," replaying in my head like a broken record. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about the necklace. Every time I tried to push it out of my mind, it crept back in, gnawing at me. I imagined it sitting in a pawn shop somewhere, gathering dust, stripped of its meaning. I wanted to march into every pawn shop in the state, find it, and take it back. But I didn't even know where to start. Then one night, while scrolling aimlessly through social media, I stumbled across an old photo. It was the picture I had put inside the locket, the one of me as a little girl, sitting on my mom's lap. My chest tightened, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. I realized something then. The necklace wasn't just a gift for her. It had been a gift for me too. A way of convincing myself that I could hold on to the past, even as everything else changed. But maybe my mom didn't see it that way. With a lump in my throat, I decided I needed answers. I didn't call ahead. I just drove to her house one Saturday morning, my heart pounding the whole way. She opened the door in her robe and slippers, her hair disheveled, looking surprised but happy to see me. "Hey, sweetheart, what are you doing here?" she asked, ushering me in. I couldn't bring myself to meet her eyes as I stepped inside. "I needed to talk to you," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. She raised an eyebrow but didn't press me. "Let me make some coffee. You look like you've been up all night." I followed her into the kitchen, watching as she moved around with practiced ease, boiling water, measuring grounds, pouring milk. It was such a mundane scene, yet it felt heavy, like we were circling something neither of us wanted to confront. Finally, as she slid a mug across the counter to me, I blurted out, "Why did you sell it?" She froze mid-motion, her hand still holding the sugar jar. For a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she set the jar down and leaned against the counter, sighing deeply. "You mean the necklace?" she said, more a statement than a question. I nodded, my throat tightening. She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together like she was trying to weave a story out of the silence. "It wasn't an easy decision," she began softly. "But sometimes, life doesn't give you easy choices." I stared at her, waiting for her to continue. "Do you remember last year when the roof started leaking during that big storm?" she asked. "The repairs were more expensive than I expected. The insurance covered some of it, but not all. And then the car broke down a month later. I was behind on bills, and I didn't want to worry you." "You could have told me," I said, my voice cracking. "I would have helped." Her eyes met mine then, full of a quiet pain. "I know, sweetheart, but you were just starting your career, and I didn't want to put that burden on you. You've worked so hard to get where you are. I couldn't ask you to sacrifice that." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I blinked them away. "But the necklace," she cut me off gently. "The necklace was a beautiful gift. One of the most thoughtful things anyone's ever given me. But it wasn't you. It wasn't our memories. I sold it because I needed to keep a roof over my head. Because sometimes practicality has to come before sentiment." Her words hung in the air between us, heavy and raw. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that the necklace meant more than money ever could. But as I looked at her, really looked at her, I saw the lines etched into her face, the weariness in her eyes, the quiet strength that had carried her through years of hardship. And I realized something. She hadn't sold the necklace because she didn't value it. She had sold it because she valued me, because she wanted to protect me from the weight of her struggles, even if it meant letting go of something precious. I swallowed hard, my chest tight with a mix of guilt and understanding. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She frowned, confused. "For what?" "For being angry. For not understanding." Her expression softened, and she reached across the counter to take my hand. "You don't have to apologize for feeling hurt. That necklace was important to you, and I know it felt like I was letting go of something special. But I hope you know that nothing, not a necklace, not anything, could ever take away what we have." I nodded, tears streaming down my face now. I wanted you to have something that would remind you of us. Of me." She smiled, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I don't need a necklace for that. Every time I see you, every time we talk, I'm reminded of how lucky I am to have you as my daughter. That's more than enough." For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest began to lift. I realized that the necklace, while meaningful, was just an object. What truly mattered was the love we shared. The kind of love that couldn't be sold or pawned or lost. We spent the rest of the day together, talking and laughing like we hadn't in years. And when I left that evening, I hugged her a little tighter, whispering, "I love you," into her hair. This time, I meant it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. What's something you've held on to as a reminder of someone you love? And how would you feel if you had to let it go? Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening.